Oh god, I didn't. I knew one day would come to this, but even now, I'm looking at this and think to myself, "Oh god, did I really tell myself that this was what it was going to have to come to?" But yes, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, by the way, and this is Bluespike, probably the most infamous troll in the history of, well, Christian Weston Chandler's time on the internet. And I'll just say for the record right now is everything you're going to hear through this, don't do what Bluespike does. Just, if there's any one thing I can emphasize in this, do not do, because I'm not entirely, because I'm very convinced that what Bluespike was doing was illegal, and whether you want to say Chris deserves some very serious repercussions for what he did, there can't be any doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that there is, well, basically this is what I'd say in court what Chris did in relation to the things we're going to talk about. This if this ever went to court, if Bluespike was ever serious about dragging Chris to court, then no, because this whole thing could be viewed as entrapment, which, considering that. Considering it was never disclosed whatsoever until that call, when Bluespike basically revealed himself and his actual age, there's not much else we can. By the way, I don't really want to view those videos. I did. If you want to see those videos, they're in part 10 of Chris Chandler Comprehensive History, and for reasons you'll understand, I would rather not actually discuss them. But I mean, they're disturbing in their own right and pretty upsetting. But let's begin. Troll disclosure. This persona was created, appropriated, or otherwise used by trolls to manipulate Chris. Bluespike was the troll behind Julie and Max. Though this identity is contrived, the Quickie may treat it as though it were a real identity because it was to Chris. It's also funnier that way. Pro tip. Do not attempt to go after the troll behind Julie and Max. Though many of his actions with the troll are controversial to observers, the troll has moved on with his life and has shown regret for his actions. I would say, in relation to that, he may say he shows regret, he regrets his actions, but hey, they still happened. He still did them. You know what I mean? Just saying you're sorry doesn't undo it. I can tell in my heart Julie is 19. Chris on Julie. Bluespike, aka Leon Spike, a 13-year-old brat with Asperger's syndrome, according to Chris, was a young troll who contacted Chris through two feigned identities, a sweetheart named Julie and her evil brother named Max. However, more of the trolling had involved Bluespike going under the Julie persona. Playing as Julie, Bluespike had phone sex with Chris for hours each night, listening to Chris masturbating. As Bluespike was in complete control of Chris, he could have done more sinister things. But night after night he engaged in nothing but noisy, fabricated, on Bluespike's end, phone sex and listening to Chris jacking off very loudly. Draw your own conclusion about his sexuality. Bluespike's trolling caused Chris to admit to Julie that he had tried using a dildo and anal beads, convinced Chris to take a long drive to Ohio in what he saw as an effort to rescue his girlfriend, produced the infamous sex tape where he fucks Kimmy, made him describe a future scene in Solitude Issue 9 alluding to his gay fans, and was the impetus for the legendary incident where his father walked in to him with his pants down. Quite literally. He was also responsible for other sick shit, including coercing Chris into shoving shards of the medallion up his ass while he watched and mocked him. After that, and subsequently being kicked out of the Miscreants, he was involved in relatively minor trolling incidents before fading into obscurity. Bluespike's treatment of Chris is considered to be sadistic. His behavior departed from standard trolling and amounted to emotional and even sexual abuse. His harsh treatment of Chris was unparalleled by any of Chris's past trolls, and was not matched until the likes of the Idea Guys appeared nearly a decade later. Of the classic trolls, Chris has noted that he hates Bluespike the most for the traumatic experience he caused during that mumble chat, along with tricking him into taking a long road trip that scared his parents half to death. Bluespike effectively provided the model that all controversial trolls following him would use, though. Unlike most that followed, he was actually successful in his goals. Also, unlike many subsequent trolls, Bluespike eventually expressed regret for his actions years later. Prologue. We get a lot of stressful torture in our lives that make us crash into slumber. Given that inspiration is a big variable, and we may have been lacking of it, this article will be completed as soon as possible at our own pace. Honest. This article is missing the following: information on the creation of the mumble chats, Bluespike's early interactions with Chris and Clyde. Bluespike was one of a set of false gal pals created specifically to troll with Chris. Personas. Julie! Chris professes his undying love while screaming a doll. Or screwing a doll, I should say. Julie Mulvana, born 30th of July 1989, was a Malvonian Methodist Sonichu fan who became Chris's sweetheart after Panda Halo. Julie first appeared in IRC in December 2008, suggesting the infamous Tour of Chris's House video. She later posed a ton of Sonichu questions submitted by fans, and was invited to Sonichu Girls. As early as the 3rd of January 2009, she asked Chris what he would do if a jerk kidnapped his sweetheart. He said, "I would learn his demands, if any, or if he hurt her, I'd strike that jerk back." Julie also got excited by the prospect of an orgy with Chris and the Sonichu Girls. The next day, it was revealed that Chris had promised his virginity to both Panda and Julie, and both ladies were furious, with Julie threatening to snuff the lid. Later, she calmed down and moved to Ohio to live with relatives. Ever classy, Chris suggested a threesome with Panda Halo. Chris refused to drive to Ohio instead, insisting that Julie can't come to him. He also couldn't be bothered to attack Clyde in IRC, even when he threatened Julie. When Chris chose Sarah May over her, Julie was crushed. Chris apologized, and then abruptly went back to talking about Vidya. Clyde Cash made more serious threats against Julie, forcing Chris to upload a famous 5th of February 2009 video that caused Chris to admit he was gay. Once Chris got it into his head that Panda Halo had burned to death in a wildfire in, was it like Western Australia was meant to be, or something like that? He began to focus even more on Julie as a sweetheart. Chris received a letter written by Julie, the first physical proof of her existence. In it, it details the love professed by her to Chris. That Valentine's Day, Chris uploaded an LBP level, Little Big Planet, and Chris and Julie brought their relationship to the next level with cybersex. Bob Chandler walked in, and the rest is history. Chris's parents didn't believe that Julie was true and honest. In an infamous video on the 20th of February 2009, Chris created a sex video for Julie with the help of his inflatable assistant, Kimmy, in order to give Julie an idea of what their first time together would be like. Well, that's a nice gesture. Chris's tender and passionate cries of "Julie" proved one of the most striking and memorable of Quickisms, even to this date. Many erroneously believe that Kimmy is Julie. This is not so. Chris may be the most desperate man alive, yes, but he's not quite got to the point where he's convinced himself any of his sex dolls are real. I don't really understand why not at this point, but let's pretend that whatever Chris's thoughts are just those thoughts. A set of postcards showing the act was sent to 14 Branch Lane Court. Bob got a hold of these postcards, which prompted him to take Chris's PSI away. Max Villana was the abusive brother of Julie. The Max persona was typically used for instances where Julie was in peril, or when Bluespike wanted to engage in tormenting Chris directly. Max and Clyde Cash convinced Chris that he had kidnapped Julie at the Miscreant headquarters in Cleveland, Ohio, and was planning to send her over to China. In response, Chris valiantly travelled all the way to Ohio in a bid to rescue her and got his parents all worried. His ancestors' spirits had wished him a safe trip to Ohio 2 days prior at Aunt Karina's funeral. Apparently. Unfortunately, because Chris got the wrong address, he ended up at a run-down house in the ghetto that was inhabited by an elderly black woman. Under the Max persona, Bluespike hacked into Chris's Yahoo and PSN accounts, threatening Chris that he would either take Julie away or sell both of the accounts on eBay. He goaded Chris into doing various embarrassing things in order to get the accounts back, ranging to stating that he is a homo to declaring Billy Mays as the new mayor of Quickville. As with the Julie persona, Chris also engaged in sexual acts involving the Max persona. In one instance, Chris claimed that he would show Max his penis per his request. However, Max also claimed that he had no interest in seeing Chris's penis. In the very next video, Max tried to goad Chris into showing his penis after telling him that he doesn't have one, only to then frantically reject this when Chris actually attempts it. He also suggested in the same video that Chris ejaculate on the medallion if he ever wanted to see Julie again. On that fateful day, Max, power mad with control over Chris, caused a schism between the trolls who had followed Chris up to this point. It says a lot when even they decided, you know what, no, that's enough. Julie reveals herself. Bluespike, stop this shit. A troll's reaction to Bluespike prompting Chris to shoving pieces of his medallion up his ass. On the 3rd of March 2009, Max gained control of Chris's PlayStation Network account, and during an hour-long audio session threatening to sell the PSN account and forbid Julie from seeing Chris, Chris was coerced into declaring Billy Mays as being the new mayor of Quickville and shoving the pieces of his destroyed solitary medallion up his anal cavity, before he was able to talk to Julie, at which point Julie admitted that both she and Max were the figments of Bluespike's imagination. At no point did Bluespike even mention the sex tape, which had already gotten nearly 2 million hits on Slutload. That's probably more than I will probably ever get, and I don't even think Slutload is even a thing anymore, so way to go, Chris, I suppose. Bluespike's female voice was an unconvincing falsetto, which makes it all the more surprising that it worked so well on Chris. This incident shattered both his heart level and his anus to 0%. Reaction. On the 5th of March 2009, an all-out civil war broke out between trolls on the Chris Chan ED discussion page on whether Bluespike had gone too far, whether he was a hypocrite, or if he was merely a tool initiated by Clyde Cash to deceive Chris into further milking for lulz. Suffice to say, a combination of outrage and troll remorse turned the whole event into a clusterfuck. If Bluespike really is 13 years old, then we know who the real child molesters are. Hey, be one of the cool kids, help this autistic guy jack off, pretend to be a girl so we can videotape and record it. That's the real reason you were shitting it and called it for a 30-minute silence just after. Clyde, at least you had the balls to say that it was you responsible. If Bluespike really is 13, then you groomed a child to perform sex acts on a mentally retarded man for your pleasure. You fuck, son. You both broke a lolcow, but there's a better sport now, ruining your lives. And don't act like you don't care. I saw you shitting yourself all that night, and the next sending waves of members out to kill threads about it or put it in false names. Just like your sock earlier in the page, ready to have a seat of there? Wit, an ED user. Even as Julie reveals herself was being recorded, other trolls can be heard remarking that it was horrible, and demanding Bluespike to stop. Early on in Mumble 11, which was recorded a day later, other trolls outright tell Bluespike to shut up and nobody likes him before he gets muted. The impact on Chris. While one might think that this level of physical and mental abuse would leave lasting scars, Bluespike's trolling initially appeared to have virtually no evident long-term impact on Chris. Just a few weeks later, after Julie revealed her true identity, Chris had moved on to thinking he'd found another sweetheart online. And just a few weeks after that, he had no trouble believing that he was having virtual sex with a famous Disney Channel celebrity. The main effect it had was that although Chris made a new solitary medallion, he stopped wearing it until the 1st of July 2009. However, years later, Chris stated that Bluespike's psychological and sexual abuse on him was in the top 2 most traumatic experiences in his life, with the other contender being the alleged incident at Nathaniel Green Elementary School, where he was pinned down by faculty during an autistic meltdown. Since Chris hasn't provided details of how he felt after the humiliating experience, figuring out how this affected him is left up to speculation. He also sounded reluctant to talk about the incident during calling out Julie David, a video where he attempted to dox locale David Harlow as being Bluespike, due to trolls feeding him misinformation. And during the Bravery Jerk interviews, he is shocked when Bravery Jerk brings up the incident. Chris came to believe that Bluespike was killed at the hands of Clyde Cash, from an offhand comment by Cash in Mumble 12. On his version of the ED page, Chris stated that that little SOB later died at the hands of the Starscream troll Clyde Cash. Of course, this statement was later revealed to be a complete and utter falsehood. Nonetheless, even 8 years after the events of the 23rd of August 2011, Chris still believes that Bluespike is dead. Some people chose to believe that it'd probably be better if Bluespike was dead, but that's besides the point. Prank calls. Even after tormenting Chris for several years and getting kicked out from his clique of trolls as a result, Bluespike continued contact with Chris, acting as the original Ween. The first call involved him trying to buy Chris's car after a troll put it up on Craigslist. Bluespike tried to trade the car for a hexbox, causing Chris to hang up. The second call involved Bluespike and another troll calling up Chris's phone to obnoxiously yell, "Julie! Julie!" taunting him about the Julie saga. Unfortunately for them, Bob answered the phone. Chewing them out for the immaturity of the prank, they hung up shortly after. Called out. On the 23rd of August 2011, Chris claimed to know Bluespike's real identity, first name David, and threatened to drop docs on him unless he made an apology video by the 15th of September 2011. In the video, Bluespike was to tell people to stop calling Chris Ian Brandon Anderson and yelling "Julie" in prank calls. Although Bluespike did not respond to Chris's demands, the death of Bob 2 weeks later caused Chris to leave the internet before he could reveal Bluespike's personal information, and he ultimately lost interest in exposing his tormentor. Even if Chris did make a video about who Bluespike really was, it would have been for naught. The personal information Chris had actually belonged to David Harlow, a locale known as Ness Helper. This is evidenced by Ness Helper and Bluespike apparently sharing the same first name, the real photo of Bluespike being a close-up of the picture of Ness Helper. And Chris's claim of Bluespike liking big rooms, which references a video rant where Ness Helper complained about the size of a hotel room he was staying in. Aside from not being a troll and having no reason nor motivation to go after Chris, the fact that Ness Helper sounds nothing like Bluespike in his videos makes it clear that they are not the same person. Furthermore, Ness Helper was born on the 9th of July 1985 and therefore would have been 23 years old during the Julie saga, 10 years older than Bluespike. Chris was presumably given false information to highlight his gullibility and possibly set up a feud between him and Ness Helper, similar to how Ahovia Rotem Harrell and Christopher Paul Whitney made negative remarks about Chris after he accused them of being Jack Thaddeus and Alec Benson Leary respectively. Of course, the aforementioned death of Bob prevented a conflict between the two from occurring. Regardless, it's likely Ness Helper wasn't even aware of Chris's misguided attempt to dox him. Today, Bluespike is easily one of the most polarizing trolls in history. Most observers tend to frown on Bluespike and his methods, as they echo those of Weens, Enablers, and A-Logs. Nevertheless, some Weens still yearn to return to the sadistic days of Bluespike, in hopes of an age of trolling where physical pain is inflicted upon Chris. Since 2009, Bluespike has come of age and matured. He now has a profile on Kiwi Farms, which has been given the Christorical figure, verification by 4 moderators. When asked to reflect upon his time trolling Chris, he wrote, "There's been tons of things in my life I've regretted and hated doing later on. All of the stuff from 10 years ago was one of them. I've moved past everything that happened those many years ago, and obviously I'm a different person now. It wasn't funny and was a very A-log thing to do. Nothing much else I can say." On August 28, 2017, Bluespike responded to a question on his Kiwi Farms account asking if given the opportunity he would do it all over again. He responded, "Probably not. If I would, I'd try to do something more similar to Liquid Chris, not try to ruin his life and just have fun with him." In January 2024, Chris was asked in an interview about his regrets, replying that he had fallen for theoretical exes, his term for trolls posing as sweethearts in particular. Chris signaled out Bluespike and his actions, further showing that Bluespike has been cemented in Chris's mind even nearly 15 years later. So, at least, well, Chris still remembers it at any rate. False accusations. With Bluespike's identity still remaining a secret, it's natural people would try to find out who was behind the persona. This was, nevertheless, resulted in some people being improperly tagged as Bluespike. A handful of people have speculated that Bluespike may be Wei Mu, a YouTube pooper and concert archivist who, as a kid in 2009 and 2010, made A-loggy rants towards Chris. These claims are bullshit and based entirely on rumors from Reddit and old comments on his videos and on image boards. Wei Mu was 11 in 2009, thus making it impossible for him to be Bluespike. Something confirmed by both a video he'd later make debunking the rumors and by a Thomas the Tank Engine gag dub he made in 2011 that stated his then age, 13 in the title. While the two did have similar voices around the time, prepubescent boys tend to have similar sounding voices in general, and Wei Mu has different speech patterns and inflections in his. Furthermore, Wei Mu had no other sort of involvement in the trolling of Chris outside of making said rants and lurking his ED page. Kind of a boring, kind of like a dull way to end this in retrospect, but that was the story of Bluespike and his relation to Chris. It doesn't sound... Now, here's the thing. I need to, really bring this home to you guys. It may not sound as shocking as I've tried to, convey for this video, but I want you guys to understand is that the actual videos and the mumble chats that happened that I've heard myself, they are, completely fucked up and incredibly disturbing. So, if there's one thing I'm going to ask of you guys before we go and our separate ways is, if you are curious about hearing any of that, I'm not going to stop you. There's not much I can actually do about that. But I want you guys to understand is that it's kind of depressing in many ways to see that Bluespike was getting a kick out of what he was doing, and really the trolls were listening to Chris cry his eyes out, and they weren't really that concerned about it, about making somebody feel that bad. Now, although it is, again, very interesting, and I've even noticed it many times myself, that Chris in later years doesn't really seem as though the implications have lasted as long as they have, but in all seriousness, that might just be because it was such a humiliating spectacle, and it was during an incredibly tough time in Chris's life. He'd just come back from driving to Ohio believing that Julie was there, and other things inside. And with all that being said and done, at least we can say they're the only people worse than Bluespike in retrospect as far as trolls would probably be the idea guys. And we're going to have a field day when we get to that, including finding out if what actually became of the idea guys, Joshua Wise and Stephen Boyd. Did they face any sort of repercussions for the actions they committed? But we'll have to find that out next time, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope all of you guys enjoyed this, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys again in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye for now.